Serious, lawyers, what's a case you regretted winning? You/diabetic responded. I'm a work comp attorney. Now represent injured people, but used to work on other side insurance defense. There was an applicant with a serious injury. Fell off a ladder, busted back with fusion, shoulder fucked, years of treatment. Internal issues, psych issues, really just fucked up. 50% plus permanent disability. We were 5 years in and finally getting to settlement time. If we bought out his future medical, settlement pretty far into 6 figures. This guy was the sole provider for wife and 2 kids. Then we found out he had a aggressive brain cancer. Expected only couple years to live, at best. Thus, we wouldn't buy out future medical anymore. Still got permanent disability for $60K-ish, but can't give medical buyout based on 25+ year life expectancy anymore. I felt terrible for the guy and his family. Me and the adjuster tried to get insurance to agree to some sort of amount like 5-year buyout, but the bin counters said hell no. The attorney knew it wasn't me making the decision. Even though he worked on that guy's file for 5+ years, he decided to take $0 in fees. I have so much respect for that attorney turning down $10,000 plus in fees to help his client in a very shitty situation. You/Demon Firebrand responded. I do family law and I represented a father who had lost most of his custody from heroin use and imprisonment as a result. He came to me saying he was clean and doing good and had his life together, and it checked out. He had been clean for almost 9 months not counting jail time and seemed sincere in wanting to resume a full relationship with his son. The other side fought viciously to keep him at extremely little custody and supervised at that, but we prevailed and got an order restoring fairly frequent unsupervised partial custody. Not long afterwards, only about 3 months after the case, he was back doing heroin, sold most of his furniture, and for me the most soul-crushing is that he set up a fake GoFundMe stuff for his child's cancer. His child didn't have cancer and has never had cancer, so you know where that money was going. I withdrew my appearance at this point, so I don't know what happened afterwards, but I imagine and hope his custody was taken away. Basically, the net result of winning that case was that the poor boy had to witness his father relapse on heroin and was exploited for money. Worst case L ever won. You/McLarenf one boy responded. I work in medical malpractice defense. Once I had a obstetrician gynecologist who burned a patient during a procedure. When I met with the doctor, he lied to me throughout the representation over 16 months, saying he had no idea how it happened. There is a doctrine in law called residential ipsa, meaning absent some sort of negligence, this accident could not have occurred. Woman came in without a burn, and after the procedure, the woman left with a burn. There's no way this doctor didn't know what had happened. The area of the burn was where he was operating on. It wasn't until I brought up settlement, because this was not a case we could win, did he say, oh maybe I do know what happened. We ultimately settled that case, which is considered a favorable outcome considering the potential high monetary verdict. Sometimes I think this doctor really ought to have lost that case and their license. You/Esquire responded. I wouldn't say I regret this so much as to this day it amazes me. As a first-year associate I was given a terrible PL case where my client received a flu shot and thereafter felt pain in his shoulder. He went to another doctor who performed an MRI and determined he had a torn rotator cuff, which was undoubtedly not related. My job was to allege the flu shot caused the rotator cuff tear. Our ortho actually correlated the two, which is the more regrettable position, and the case paid out. Being the bottom of the totem pole, I had no choice but to take the case, which was handed down by a partner. But at the same time, just overwhelmingly made me feel like the worst stereotyped attorney and just hated having to walk into court on it and feel my reputation being destroyed. You/deleted responded. In one of my first cases after passing the bar exam, a young man retained me on a drunk driving charge. No one was hurt, but he totaled his car. During trial, the arresting police officer testified that my client was clearly drunk at the accident scene, and that my client was loudly blaming the accident on the fucking asshole who stole his car, crashed it, and then fled before the cops arrived. However, according to 2 other witness statements tendered into evidence, it was my client's friend, the passenger, who was screaming about the asshole who stole the car, not my client, the driver. The cop must have confused the 2 men during his testimony. This discrepancy raised a reasonable doubt in the judge's mind, so she acquitted my client. At the time, the acquittal was somewhat unexpected for me. In my personal view, my client was clearly drunk and responsible for the accident, regardless of who was blaming the mystery asshole to the cops, but I was happy my young client got off, no one was hurt, and lessons were learned. And I was quite euphoric to have won my first criminal case. The regret. About a month after the acquittal, my young client called me at 3 a.m. from the police station saying it's me again. The police arrested me for drunk driving again. Can you help me? Not only did I answer no, I instantly regretted getting the earlier acquittal. My client apparently didn't learn any lessons. You/deleted responded. I got a spoiled brat of a teenager cleared of a shoplifting charge when he absolutely had done it. His rich parents hired me to represent him. I did that to the best of my ability, and we went to trial and won, but I can't say I felt good about it. This kid needed to be taught some accountability for his actions, and his parents just wanted to buy their way out of any trouble he got into. You/Armto responded. Had this happened to me twice. Got my client out on bail only to thereafter have him up and killed. First time, he was in building supposedly selling, got chased by the police and a struggle ensued where he was shot point blank in the head. Mother told me that it was my fault that he was killed and that I was working with the DA and the police. Second time, a young man no more than 16 gets released while waiting trial on robbery. One of the conditions of release was that he maintain a curfew. That very night he breaks curfew, goes over to somebody else's house and was killed in a drug-related robbery. Mother blamed me and said that the devil was working through me, that we were all demons. Criminal defense is a hard business. Edit. Thank you everyone for the kind comments. Rest assured I don't take what they said personally. I've been around a long time and know that they were just acting out and that I just happened to be the closest person at the time and the only one who would actually listen to them. Edit 2. LOL. Yeah, I can see how that reads like I might be talking about my mom. Going to leave it because of the LOL, but for the record my mom thinks I'm a saint and can do no wrong. Edit 3. To the people saying that got what they deserved, honestly it's easy to throw stones, but drugs, alcohol, mental illness are tough things. GD willing none of you will know what it's like. You/Mintraw responded. Did a divorce where the husband, who I was representing, wanted to trade custody of his children for a set of bedroom furniture. The bedroom furniture was not even like a family heirloom. It was furniture that you could probably get at a Rooms to Go or something. Still makes me ill. That's why I got out of family law. Edit. I'd honestly like to thank all of you for your various points of view on this particular pain point in my career. For the record, yes, I did win that particular point, but it did not fill me with any joy. But, those who said that it was probably for the best, perhaps you're right. You/Orm518 responded. I won a summary judgment motion that my firm filed not expecting to win. We had a decent argument, but odds were way worse than a coin flip and judges don't like granting summary judgment because it's an extreme remedy. Client initially was thrilled, case is over, we tried to break the news gently. Nope. 3 years later we're back in the same spot we were before we won our motion. The other side appealed it up to the state Supreme Court and won, because the Supreme Court said the trial judge should have denied our motion. So, we are back at square one. North of $100,000 in legal bills, with no resolution. Maybe it'll settle, maybe it will go to trial. I'll find out in the next 3 to 4 months. ETA, clarified my parenthetical. You/Make-Believe Not War responded. Little late to the party, but LVE got one I still think about a lot. Worked in criminal defense, represented a guy in a DUL. He had priors, so another conviction meant time, loss of license, problems. Long story short, he was pulled over by police after they followed him leaving a bar. At trial I elicited admissions from the arresting officer that during the 2.5 miles he followed him for, he did not observe a single moving violation, no speeding, erratic driving, driving over the lines, blowing stop signs, running red lights. Didn't even stop suddenly at red lights. Also got the DRE officer to testify that the accused only spoke Spanish and they couldn't get an interpreter officer to the roadside to explain the field sobriety exercises, which the officers documented the accused refused to perform. Jury came back in 15 minutes. Guy was extremely grateful, and his lovely family was very gracious in thanking me and our office. Feel good about the whole thing. Couple months later I'm in county to meet with a client, and I see him in one of the pods. Find out sometime after the trial he violently sexually assaulted his 8-year-old stepdaughter. Think about that one a lot. Edit. The comments have helped. Thanks. You/Dotajo responded. There was a case that I saw that involved a claim with fee shifting, meaning that if the plaintiff won, their attorney's fees would get paid by the defendant. Defendant pushed an aggressive legal position at trial that the judge agreed with, and won, avoiding a few thousand in liability to the plaintiff and a few thousand in attorney's fees. So far so good. But then the plaintiff appeals all the way to the state's high court, requiring a ton of briefing and time. High court agrees with plaintiff, reverses and sends back to the trial court, which now enters judgment against the defendant for a few thousand in damages against the plaintiff and tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees from the appeal. The defense lawyer probably regretted winning at first on that aggressive argument to the trial court. You/Bearbaswilly responded. A few pop to mind. The one where the client never paid said above is absolutely right. Poured a ton of effort and emotion into a case and got a great result only to get stiffed. No, it's cool, I made sure they didn't foreclose on the family farm, but just ignore my bills. We settled a case while the jury was out. We were the defendant, so we were potentially on the hook for some amount of money if the jury found us liable. While they were deliberating, we agreed to pay something. The jury came back, found us not liable at all. So we won and still had to pay the agreed to amount. And, appeals that LVE won. I've gotten very good results on appeal. Sometimes, the remedy is that you go back to the trial court and do it all over again, reverse and remand. Surprise. The trial court judge who made boneheaded mistake that got reversed, is not happy to see me. You/deleted responded. I handle employment cases. We took a disability accommodation case against a regional retail company. To be clear, we were right. Our client was not being given a pretty easy accommodation. Normally, demand letters don't have any real effect. We have stopped sending them to streamline the process and have just started filing with the EEOC or the courts directly. That's SOP for us. In this case, we followed SOP and filed with the EEOC. The company got in touch with us immediately, expressing horror and regret. The whole thing was one poorly trained manager acting out. While that's common, companies usually try to cover for the manager and often make things worse. This one did not. They immediately sent him to be retrained, offered the exact accommodation requested, and paid all lost wages and fees, with some extra for emotional distress. Client happily accepted and went back to work. After seeing the company's great response, I felt bad for taking them to the EEOC. Not bad enough to start sending time-wasting demand letters again, but if I ever see them on the other side, I'll make an exception. Edit. I almost wish there was no confidentiality provision in the settlement agreement. Would love to say who this was and tell people that they're a great company. I now prefer shopping with them over their competitors, since I know they're an upstanding group. Every company fucks up sometimes. Not many acknowledge it and try to make it right when they do. U/Zerosome Games responded. I did some custody work early in my career and won some cases more on the merit of my trial skills than on the merit of the parents. The thing with family law work in general is that there is essentially no bar to entry. Anybody with a law degree and a pulse can get a family law practice up and running quickly because there is just an absolute glut of work. What that also means is that 75% plus of the lawyers practicing family law are clueless and awful. Early in my career I certainly was clueless, but at the least I was not awful. Therefore, in a battle between clueless plus awful versus just clueless, clueless usually won. So yeah, I can't recall any specific cases, except to say that fighting over children in court is a terrible thing and basically everyone loses. I regret that entire portion of my career. U/Genius responded. Not really winning, but I recently had a case settle where my client was so obviously lying it was painful. He was in a fender bender and said he was too disabled to drive or to work at the office as a result, and that his employer fired him after he had been on disability leave for almost a year. A few months after filing, we discovered that he played in a national, amateur, full-contact football league and there was footage of him getting tackled, end-zone dancing, and tackling during the time he claimed he was too hurt to sit at a desk. Even when I confronted him on it, he claimed he hadn't played while he was injured despite having a stat line and footage of him playing from games dated on days he was supposedly getting physical therapy. We didn't settle for as much as most of my cases, but he still walked away with like $20,000. I'm happy to be a plaintiff's attorney for the most part because my clients have typically been wronged, but he was such a bald-faced liar it really pissed me off. Edit. It's worth noting that, embarrassingly, opposing counsel brought it to our attention after they spoke to some of his former co-workers who recalled him bragging about being in the league. U/Mafixit 420 responded. I helped represent a slumlord in a lawsuit regarding discrimination in public housing based on disability. The state was representing the disabled tenant. The facts were pretty clear. Slumlord discriminated on the basis of disability. Our state doesn't have much case law regarding discrimination in housing based on disability. So the state was really hoping to make case law. We ended up sowing enough doubt to survive the tenant's motion for summary judgment. Knowing that the tenant needed money, we made an offer for a decent amount of money for a disabled tenant, but peanuts for the slumlord. I imagine the state wanted to proceed to trial, but the tenant needed money and accepted. By gaining the best outcome for our client, we allowed the slumlord to get off basically scot-free and deprived our state of needed case law. U/Kev responded. I've posted about this before. I defended a death case, representing the insurance company. A man had a brain injury due to a car accident, and died 6 months later. His family sued my client. I've never seen a lazier effort on behalf of a plaintiff. The plaintiff firm immediately handed the case over to a junior associate. She barely did anything with it. We had settlement negotiations, but they were way too high considering the lack of actual medical evidence they had come up with to link the death to the car accident. It probably was related, but you can't walk into court with that argument and no evidence to support it. That seemed to be their plan. On the eve of trial, I told OC to accept the settlement, but she refused. I told her she would lose because I was going to get all of her evidence thrown out. Still, they went to trial. The partner that was supposed to be there with her didn't show up because his dog was sick. No joke. As I predicted, all of her evidence was thrown out. The family was crying. I won, but I didn't feel great about it. The judge was appalled. I'm sure the firm was sued for legal malpractice. The young associate was gone within weeks. U/Kejanorth responded. Prosecuted a murder case. 21-year-old kid starts dating an older guy's ex-girlfriend. The older guy, real roughneck, loose connections with a local biker gang, was going all over his small town talking about how he was going to kick the kid's ass. The older guy sends some nudes of the ex while he's getting drunk at a bar, so the kid says something smartass in response. Older guy comes to the kid's house to fight him. The kid shoots him once, and the older guy dies. Jury didn't buy self-defense or castle doctrine. Convicted of voluntary manslaughter. 20 years. Burned up his appeals with no luck. I have a son about the kid's age. I could totally imagine him doing the exact same things if he were in a similar situation. Shit's going to haunt me until I die. No doubt about it. Started thinking about other work the moment the verdict came back. The long and winding road responded. Was representing the government at a social benefits tribunal. The applicant was an autistic man who was struggling to make ends meet but was trying his absolute best to contribute everything he could to society. He had a job where his manager was very accommodating and he was a very sympathetic person. He just wanted the extra cash to make his life a little easier for himself. Sadly, he didn't qualify for the benefit, but I think he deserved it. My closing argument was that no matter how much we empathized with this man, no matter how deserving we thought he was, he simply didn't qualify and the tribunal had to apply the law. He was unsuccessful, and when I left the building to head back to my office, he was just sitting outside on the curb crying. That image has stuck with me for a few years. Pretty heartbreaking. Edit. For those of you that are sending me words of support, thank you. That was the lowest point in my career and I have moved on. It's really important to remember that mental health in the legal profession is a very real issue that is killing people. There aren't sufficient supports in place to help people like me and many others who find themselves in positions like this. For those telling me I'm a horrible person, you literally can't say anything that will make me feel worse about this, so please have some compassion. I work elsewhere and provide a much needed service to my country and my community. I also donate to a mental health charity on a monthly basis. What are you doing to fight unfair systems? Sir Drumelat responded. Guy was a convicted felon so couldn't be in possession of any firearms. He pawned 2 guns that were traced back to him by the pawnshop paperwork. He said they were his and put his thumbprint on the papers, also had store clerk say he walked in carrying them. His story was that his girlfriend's mom found them after her father died, they were his and wanted to get rid of them. So girlfriend, also convicted felon, asked him to help sell them, which he did. DA office refused to waive the 3-year Minuteman prison sentence, so it went to trial. I was the prosecutor when it went and ultimately got a guilty. The guy had to do 3 years day for day. I felt bad because I think his story was true, but he had a conviction for armed robbery and sexual battery from 30 years ago, so that was why the office wouldn't agree to reduce the sentence. Hmnanapi responded. My mom is a lawyer, who worked a case against one of those if you or a loved one were affected by a drug suits. The drug was, in some cases, causing heart issues. Important to note, stress can cause heart issues as well. The suit was filed by a slimy law firm, who were telling people that they could win money, even if people were not actually experiencing the side effects. One of these clients had a brain tumor, recently had a nasty divorce, and her son had just died, among all sorts of other terrible luck. Her heart issues did not match the side effects of the drug, and instead looked stress-related, so my mom had to cross-examine this woman, asking, could your inoperable brain tumor be causing you stress? Could your divorce from your abusive husband be causing you stress? Could the death of your young son be causing you stress? That woman's case was dismissed, but my mom felt terrible. AEK 427 responded. I worked in criminal law my first summer of law school. My first case was defending a large 6 feet 2 inches teenage gang member who stabbed a rival gang member in the temple with a pencil with deadly results. I was put in charge of the motion drafting and research under a supervising attorney. I also had several conversations with this young man, but he was remarkably well spoken, so I never felt like he was an actual killer, even though he admittedly was one. I remember working really hard in the library for hours looking for helpful case law. It felt great in the moment to help your client in any way possible and put up the best defense. Ultimately, they conditionally discharged him, which is family court, since he was a juvenile, parlance for 1 year probation. I remember my emotions immediately shifting from relief to guilt fear. I questioned the entire practice area that could allow a killer to walk the streets because of good legal work, and I ultimately decided it was not for me. No judgment to any criminal attorneys, just not for me. Now I'm a happyish real estate attorney, and by happyish I mean kill me now. Leomesis responded. Yeah. A nasty case. Had a guy in the UK who came from Zimbabwe who lived here for 3 years from the age of 16 and then served in the British Army. Got back. Got himself a girlfriend. One night went to her apartment without her there and found items that would suggest she had more than one partner. After having a heated argument with her, it turns out she is a sex worker. He gets annoyed and strangles and kills her. He runs off to Heathrow Airport to catch the first plane to Zimbabwe and is caught by the police. He claimed that he had his passport on him because pure chance, and the reason why he was going back to Zimbabwe was so he could commit suicide at his grandfather's grave in shame. The cases against him were to A. Imprison him, B. Deport him. He got imprisoned, but we were called in for the second case as I was with an immigration law firm then. We won the appeal. Twice. On the grounds that he was mentally scarred by the fighting in the army, his officer gave him an amazing report and that British soldiers don't get the best treatment in Zimbabwean prisons. Now he walks the streets, with a tag, as a result of good behavior. This has always been a weird case. He was definitely supposed to have been deported for the grievous crime. But human rights are human rights. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.